Art for art's sake. Art is the reaction of the soul to the beautiful objects of life and nature. Art owes its origin to deep emotions and feelings of human personality. When our heart is fully awakened in love or in other great emotions, our personality is in its flood tide. Then there is the urge to express itself for the very sake of expression. Then comes art. All fine arts are the presentation of the real in its mental aspect. The first question which arises is what is the function and role of art in human society? Should art subserve morality and help in inculcating virtue, or should art be pursued for its own sake without keeping in view the claims of morality and cultivation of virtuous ways of living? The Greeks believed in the moralistic view of art. According to Plato and others, the real purpose of art was to inculcate moral value. Plato was particularly hostile to art, to mere beauty and sensual charms, and he had no place for painters and poets in the Republic. Aristotle carried further the moralistic view of art, and the conception of poetry and tragedy was principally governed by the consideration of morality. Among the Chinese, Confucius, the great philosopher, upheld the moralistic view of art. He had a poor notion of art for art's sake. Tolstoy, among the Russians of the 19th century and Marxists of the present day communistic regime, are all for the moral value of literature. In England, the attitude of critics towards arts and relation to morality has been varied character. While some great artists and critics have expressed fervently the moralistic view of art, others have advocated with an equal fervor the theory of art for art's sake. Among those who believed in the moralistic view of art, the poets of the 19th century must be given a prime place. Sidney says that the poet delight and teach. The poets teach by presenting an ideal world for the imitation of the reader. Dryden, a great critic of the Restoration period, has maintained that art is meant for the delight and instruction of mankind. Among the Romantic poets, Wordsworth upheld the moralistic view of art and insisted that a poet should propagate the moral and spiritual values of life. I should like to be known as a teacher or nothing else, observed the leader of the Romantic revival. It was Ruskin among the Victorians who forcefully and vigorously advocated the moralistic view of art. According to Ruskin, all the fine arts must be didactic to the people, and that is their chief end. Matthew Arnold was another great advocate of the school of morality and stated a poetry of revolt against moral ideas is a poetry of revolt against life. A poetry of indifference towards moral ideas is a poetry of indifference towards life. In the 20th century, George Bernard Shaw had strongly emphasized the moral values of art. He refused to write any play for the mere glorification of art. For the sake of art, I would not take the trouble of writing a single line, says Bernard Shaw. But there is no dearth of such critics who believe in the doctrine of art for art's sake. The concept of art for art's sake has its origin in France. Its origin has been contributed to Victor Cousin, but the most important exponent of this theory was uh, Gautier. According to him, art is not merely amoral, but it is anti-moral. Then there was Flaubert, who was the greatest exponent of the theory of art for art's sake. He was a great aesthete. He remarked, "No great poet has ever drawn conclusion." Baudelaire was of opinion that poetry has no end beyond itself. If a poet has followed a moral end, he has diminished his poetic force, and the result is likely to be bad. Born in France, this doctrine was imported into England by Whistler and expounded in its more extreme form by Oscar Wilde. It is a mistake to consider Walter Pater as the originator of this movement. Walter Pater, it is true, owed much to Flaubert and, like Oscar Wilde, turned his back on the moralism of Ruskin, who had taught that art must be didactic. During the Romantic period, it was John Keats who clearly stated that art should have no palpable design on the readers, and the purpose of the artist should be to create beauty rather than be a reformer and moral preacher. During the Victorian age, Swinburne stood for art's sake and advocated the freedom of art. Walter Pater was the major prophet of the English aestheticism. Was Oscar Wilde followed Pater and became the most ardent and enthusiastic leader of the art for art's sake movement. He remarked, "There is no such thing as moral or immoral work. Books are well written or badly written. The moralistic and aesthetic views of art are diametrically offered to each other. Both these extreme views are unjustified. Art cannot be wholly the handmaiden of morality, nor can it be completely divorced from morality." The views of Swinburne, Oscar Wilde, and Whistler that art is for the sake of art and has no relation with morality cannot be accepted. The artist is a member of human society and has his being in the midst of people who have respect for moral values of life. Hence, the artist cannot claim to keep his art divorced from reality and society. Art is for society, its value is for society, and art bordering on obscenity and pornography cannot be accepted. Oscar Wilde was discredited because his works led to moral lassitudes. The artist, while gratifying his aesthetic sense, has to keep in view the moral values of life. Art cannot be divorced from morality. Works simply gratifying some sensual feelings can never be ranked in the circle of great art. The beautiful form of art is no guarantee of its excellence. B. Subject matter has to be taken into account, for a degraded and corrupted art will ultimately lead to the degradation of society, a danger to which followers of the school of arts for art's sake have chosen to over to gaze Weger's opera is a work of art, but it is a degraded art, for it represents the life of a highwayman and incites young men to take to that course of life. However beautiful may be the style and language of works like Zola's Nana, it can never be placed in the rank of works of great or good art. Mere form and beauty are no consolation. Form ought to be allied to good matter before a work of art can take its rightful place in society. Even Walter Pater, the great advocate of art for art's sake, realized this fundamental fact and said in the concluding part of his famous essay on style, great art is only possible there is only when there is a hidden eminence or nobility in the subject. But the term morality in art does not mean didacticism. An artist is not a teacher or a preacher in the real sense of the term. In fact, he is a creator, a revealer, and an exhibitor. So, morality in art does not. Sorry, I'm not able to finish it because I got it in my library, which was very old, dated 17th February 1980. Thank you. Please subscribe and like.